listening to The Betmaker Show. This is the NFL post-draft NFC North team season betting odds preview for Monday, April 29th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of The Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, here we go. It's a preview of the NFC North. Glad to be with you from Las Vegas here on the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. I'm Brian Blessing. Always great information coming to us. We've got the head NFL odds maker at Betmaker.eu. Jack is going to join us, Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet, and we're going to dive knee-deep into the NFC North, gearing up for another NFL season. And let's not waste time diving right in. Hello, Jack. How you doing, sir?
Good, Brian. How are you today?
Outstanding. Let's start at the top. And how about to win the division itself?
Well, let's start with Chicago being the favorite at plus 185. This is a highly contested division, by the way. Green Bay follows right behind at plus 190, due in part to what you'll talk about with all the pickups they had. Minnesota right behind that at plus 210. And then naturally, the long shot falling way behind there is 15-1 with the Lions. We just throw them out of the contest. Poor Stafford is going through the thing with his wife. He can't be fully focused, I don't believe. It's just going to be tough all the way around.
All right, let's go to the Packers. 9.5 under $1.30. The starting point is always Aaron Rodgers. In the draft, they got Rashawn Gary. I know they were very happy to get him. The defensive lineman from Michigan, but it was a little bit surprising that they really focused on defense in the draft. They really didn't give Rodgers much help, and we know how good he is.
I think he can do a great job with an ordinary offense. Now, I know the arguments are he's on the downside, but he's nursed injuries the last couple of years. He should have the friction done away with Coach McCarthy moving on, whose fault it was. I'm not taking any sides, but I think it's better that they parted ways. If you look at them last year, their opponent's stats on defense, they gave up a lot of yardage. They gave up 446, 1,918 rushing yards, and they gave up 3,752 passing yards. That's too much. They picked up what they needed on defense to help that situation.
All right, we go to Minnesota, 9 over $1.25. You know, when you go around the league and you look at teams that maybe stub their toe and could have a big bounce back year, Minnesota's right near the top of the list for me. 8-7-1 last year, and I just thought they underachieved. And I know, Jack, last year there were a lot of people thought they could win the whole thing.
Let's put it this way. I forget the stat exactly, but Kirk Cousins has a terrible record against teams above 500. So I don't see them improving at all. I think that's going to be their downfall. So with them, I would go under the 9.
The one thing they should get credit for, they did really well on draft day. Garrett Bradbury, I think, is going to be one of the steals of the draft, the offensive lineman the center out of NC State. It kind of comes down to two guys here. If Cousins, and it's a big if, and you laid it out beautifully, struggles against really good teams. But the one thing we know about them, that defense does fly around to the ball, and that's a reflection of their coach Zimmer.
Great. No, yeah. Coach Zimmer is what kept them in there last year. It was their performance overall. If not for his strategy, his winning ways, his personnel management, it would have been worse off.
All right, and then Detroit, 6.5, and it's a 20-cent line, so it's minus a dime either way. Love what they did on draft day, getting T.J. Hawkinson. Think he's going to have a wonderful career, the tight end out of Iowa. But it begins and ends with Matt Stafford. And here's the real rub to me, Jack, from an odds maker's perspective. On the other side of the counter, the players have the same quandary. This is a guy a couple of years ago, you're going, he's an elite quarterback. He finally figured it out. He finally stays healthy. His decision-making process has improved. And then last year, Stafford went back to being Stafford, where he'd throw a pick six that you would literally go, a high school quarterback wouldn't make that throw. It's awfully tough with confidence to develop an opinion and make numbers.
Well, I have developed an opinion on this one, Brian. Under 6.5.
It's that simple. Well, see, now that's the beauty of it. So how much of the shade, when you hang the number, You got your number. So for argument's sake, is this a fair assumption that your numbers maybe were something in the 7 range, but you've got that opinion, and odds making, you have to have a human flair to it and a human feel. You can use numbers and blindly follow them, and they can take your legs right out from underneath you. So did you put a shade on this to the under?
I have to honestly answer no. I mean, I actually, if I had shaded it at all, I would have gone down to 6. This was just a general consensus of the talent on the team against their schedule. But I think they will underachieve in this situation.
All right, one final follow-up for you here on that same topic then. If you are of that opinion, generally speaking, would you anticipate, and has this happened in the past, would you anticipate the closer we get to preseason camp and people start doing their homework, is this a number you would anticipate dropping with either juice attached to it, or could it drop to 6? Would you expect the money to come in on the under?
Let me put it to you this way. We open at 6.5, and if we get a regular customer or 2 betting under, we're going to drop the money and we're going to go under and under further. If you show me a very smart player, a professional player who comes in and bets under 6.5, I'm going to go to 6 with a little over money.
So there you have it. I mean, there's the human touch, right? I mean, money can drive a number and you massage it. And the last thing you want to do is move a number on air. But what you're saying to me, if I'm hearing you right, is once you see some sharp money or opinions you respect, that under money's coming, you'd be quicker to react to the under here than you would be on other teams?
Right. Because in my heart, I believe it's lower. I know that I might draw a line in the sand more on Chicago at 9.5 if they bet under than Detroit at 6.5 if they bet under.
There you go. That's what we're looking for here. We love doing this here at the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. We're going to get opinions from both sides of the counter. That was Jack from Bookmaker.eu, their head NFL odds maker, and the On Deck Circle is our pal, Bruce Marshall. Don't forget, you can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And don't go anywhere. We'll come back with Bruce Marshall, more on the NFC North on the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com.
All right, folks, back with you here on the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report, continuing our preview with the NFC North. Bruce Marshall, our good friend from the Gold Sheet, is kind enough to join us as we dive into this NFC North division, Bruce, which is really wide open, let's say, with the exception of Detroit.
It really is. And, Detroit's hoping that they can even get back in the mix here, but it looks like they're going to be pushing up from the rear. New coach in Green Bay, coach on the hot seat in Minnesota, perhaps, and maybe even in Detroit. It's been a while since the Bears have looked to be this clear of a favorite in the division, but I think that's the way we have to look going into the fall, Brian.
All right, we're looking at the Bears. We'll call them the co-favorite, actually, with the pack 9.5 for both of them. 9.5 under $1.20. Big question here, Bruce, for the Bears. They had nothing to say about it in the draft this year because their home run was Khalil Mack last year, and it was a wonderful win for them. And now the further development of Trubisky is really the focus of attention here. You go back to a clanked field goal, or who knows how far they might have gone last year.
Yeah, and I think actually solving the place kicker issues, it won't be Cody Parkey this year. He's been let go, and that's going to be something we're going to watch through the summer with the Bears and into the fall, because as we saw, that prevented them from advancing at least on in the NFC last year all the way to the next round. So that's going to be an issue there, but I think the Bears look in pretty good shape. They didn't have to do much in the offseason. The roster was pretty well set. They were sort of bystanders in free agency. Like you said, they've made the big addition last year with Khalil Mack and transformed that from a good to an outstanding defense. Trubisky's progress last year, he advanced on the learning curve last year. I don't think he's quite where they want him to be yet, but he's getting closer. I love the addition of David Montgomery, the running back from Iowa State. I think he's going to end up being a steal and maybe turn out to be the best draft pick here for the Bears. It certainly will take Jordan Howard's place. By me, this is the team that's favored in the division. And again, it's back to that defense and Khalil Mack, who is really the impact player, at least on the stop end side of the equation in this division, if not the whole NFC. So I'm thinking the Bears get back into the playoffs and maybe again as the North champ, and I might be looking over that 9.5 right now.
Is this a weird parallel? I'm inclined to think no, that they'll right the ship here because I think a fish rots from the head down and they've got their act together. But I look at Chicago and what they did last year, and it was terrific. But then I would think of what Jacksonville was the year prior to that, and then the Jags, with the weight of expectation, stubbed their toe. Is that an unfair parallel?
No, it's something we ought to mention, and that's when a team comes out of nowhere like that. And I mean, the Raiders the year before that, even you could say. I think the Bears are built for the long haul a little bit better because Trubisky showed that improvement last year. They are built defense first. Now, we could have said that also about the Jaguars 2 years into last year, but I think this is a little bit different situation. It looks like Matt Nagy's got things in order there. He hit the ground running right off of the bat after his move from Kansas City. And I still think the Bears, because of the way the team has been built here, it looks like they've got some staying power. And the fact Trubisky should get better, and I don't think we're going to have a Blake Bortles-like meltdown this year. I don't think they'll be like the Jags last year, but it is a fair question to ask.
Bruce, we go to the Packers, 9.5 under $1.30. And listen, the starting point is you've got Aaron Rodgers, but they go out and they address defense in this year's draft. And the one thing that always kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me for the Packers is, as great as Aaron Rodgers is, they never have a running game. I just think how good they'd be if they had a legitimate threat. And you would think that they would have a running game if teams are playing nickel and dime defenses all the time to stop Aaron Rodgers. It just never seems to pan out.
Yeah, it hasn't for years in Green Bay, and you wonder why it doesn't. I'm not sure it is this year. And they made another coaching switch here, and Matt LaFleur comes in from the Titans. Now, he had been with the Rams before that as Sean McVay's right-hand man, but so this is his fourth different team in 4 years. And they're hoping they can catch some of that Sean McVay lightning in a bottle. The first thing that LaFleur has obviously done in Green Bay is make sure he's on the same page as Aaron Rodgers, because from all indications, Mike McCarthy wasn't in the past several years. And this team has really disappointed the last few seasons, so we'll see how they go. They were a little bit more willing to do some things free agency than in the past, and this is because the new GM, Brian Gutekunst, not as afraid as Ted Thompson, his predecessor, to go into free agency. Mostly second-tier types, although they did add a couple of linebackers, Darius Smith and Preston Smith, who should be plugged in immediately to their 3-4. So they didn't sit out the offseason there as far as adding free agents. This is the team with the most upside here, we would think, but Rodgers has some problems getting along with people, and if this thing goes sour with LaFleur early, that's not going to bode well for the Packers. I put them beneath the Bears heading into the season. We'll see how things develop at Lambeau.
Minnesota 9 over $1.25. Bruce, safe to say they were one of the underachieving disappointments last season?
Yeah, it would be, and I think look right at the quarterback spot. Kirk Cousins didn't deliver what they wanted. Neither did their new coordinator, John DeFilippo, who was relieved of his duties in February by Mike Zimmer, who might suddenly be under some pressure this season if they can't make the playoffs. And the same might hold true for the GM, Brian Spielman. So they've got to make something happen this year. One of the more curious rumors in the offseason, Brian, was that there was talk in the Twin Cities that they might want to bring Case Keenum back at quarterback. And those were some very real rumors that surfaced for a while. Remember, Keenum came in an emergency role 2 years ago and steered them all the way to the NFC title game. And the fact is, this offense seemed to work better with Keenum than it did for Cousins. They spent a lot of money on Cousins. They're going to stick with him at least for another year. But I think there's plenty of questions in Minnesota. We mentioned the heat that is on Mike Zimmer there. the fact they weren't able to do much, if anything, in free agency because the cap room was so limited there. They're not going to even be able to sign all their draft picks. They're going to have to make some other moves personnel-wise to just loosen up some room. So I think this is a situation that could unravel a little bit more this season, Brian, and maybe the Vikings stumble a bit more. So I am not that bullish on Minnesota heading into the fall.
The one thing we can say is that's a defense that flies after the ball, and it is a quarterback league. But I think Zimmer had his pause in this draft, and they really went to the trenches to maybe try to change the culture on offense. I think the Garrett Bradbury pick, the center from NC State, is a steal. It's not a sexy pick. Now, I think this kid's going to be a stud for a decade. They get the tight end, Irv Smith from Alabama, and they actually get Madison, the running back from Boise State. So they really did do a lot in terms of trying to change the face of the offense. Mostly, it would seem, to get that ground attack going.
Well, they sort of did that late last season after they moved DiFilippo out. They tried to run the ball a bit more. The fact they drafted Irv Smith means that you might see more double tight end sets this year, and maybe with Kyle Rudolph and Smith on the field at the same time. And adding this, and they did have some offensive line questions, so that was one move they had to make with Bradbury, which didn't surprise in the draft. However, they might lose Riley Reif, their left tackle. If he could be a cap casualty going into the season, like I said, they don't have enough cap room to sign all their draft picks. They're going to have to still make a cut. They thought they could move Kyle Rudolph and trade, but they didn't. They've got some salary cap issues that they got to figure out as well going into camp to sign all these draft picks. We'll see.
All right, we go to Detroit. Season win total 6.5, minus a dime either way. And that was kind of a hound's breakfast last year with Patricia in the transition coming over as the new head coach. Matt Stafford's had off-the-field issues, unfortunately, with his wife's health. And you wonder about this team. It seemed like Stafford had really turned a corner and really was a guy that was a veteran quarterback that was putting a team on his shoulders. And it was just a mess last year. They get a real nice addition, and this is no small pickup here. T.J. Hawkinson, the tight end, they're sincerely hoping that he can be a game changer for them on offense.
Yeah, I mean, they're hoping he can be like the last Iowa tight end that made it big in the NFL. George Kittle certainly did a great job with the 49ers last year. And there's another Iowa tight end, Noah Fant, we'll be talking about later when we get to Denver. But, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting offseason here for the Lions. They also made a couple of interesting moves personnel-wise. They added an impact defensive end, Trey Flowers, of whom Patricia is familiar with from their days in New England together. So that should be an upgrade, I think, from Ziggy Ansah, who's departed there. C.J. Anderson, also a really nice free agent pickup at running back there. We saw how he helped the Rams down the stretch last year, Brian, and with Kerryon Anderson having injury issues last year. That could be a worthwhile pickup, too. Yeah, the Stafford situation, this has been trying offseason for him with his wife. Hopefully that settles by the time we get to summer and beyond. I have bigger questions here, though, about Matt Patricia, and looks like perhaps the latest in a line of failed Bill Belichick disciples who have failed as head coaches. That was not very encouraging last year. Didn't make a lot of friends in the Motor City. They stumbled in at 6-10. Had they not beaten the Packers in the final regular season game, there was talk that he might be on the chopping block there. That might also apply to GM Bob Quinn this year, too. So I think both these guys have their jobs on the line. And I tell you, the track record of Belichick's disciples is not that good. So we're wondering here what's going to happen with Detroit, and if this thing starts to go sideways early, the rumors are going to start flying hot and heavy there, and Patricia might not make it to the end of the season. They have dismissed coaches there, especially since Mrs. Ford took over as the franchise matriarch a few years ago before the season is done. I'm not too optimistic with Detroit.
I won't saddle you with great minds think alike, but that was going to be my next question to you, and you kind of alluded to it. The Bill Belichick coaching tree, the jury is way out. I think the Andy Reid coaching tree is doing a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, shoot, Nagy was one up there in Kansas City, certainly did it. I mean, you look at all the Belichick disciples, maybe Bill O'Brien in Houston, though there are some questions about him as well. But it's a litany of guys who generally haven't worked as head coaches. Would it be Mangini? Would it be Romeo Crennel? Josh McDaniels, a disaster in Denver. Charlie Weiss, the list goes on and on. And Patricia looks like he's following in those footsteps. It's hard to emulate what Belichick does. And, some of these guys have failed trying to do it. There's only one Belichick, and his disciples have found that out.
And finally, in the NFC North, they're out of conference. They've got to saddle up and play the AFC West. When push comes to shove, you look at this. Do we go with Rodgers? I mean, the fact that he's the wonderful starting point. I don't know that they added enough, and I just wonder if the Bears can now deal with the weight of expectations.
My gut feel is yes. I think because the way they're built, because the way I think Matt Nagy knows what he's doing. I mean, he's another Andy Reid. That's not the worst thing. He might even be better. And I just think it looks all systems go in Chicago. There's some questions about the new coach in Green Bay too. And, there's some losses last year that just scratched your head with Green Bay. So I'm thinking Chicago is the favorite in here, and barring a real rash of injuries, I expect the Bears to repeat as the North champ.
Well, we always expect Bruce Marshall to bring it from the gold sheet, and he did just that again in our preview of the NFC North. Thanks, Bruce, as always.
Okay, Brian.
Folks, we hope you're enjoying these podcasts, our division previews, and we've got you covered on all sports. And it's very simple to follow along on social media with us. And if you like these podcasts, please do subscribe on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And you can find all of our episodes on our website and sign up for our newsletter at betmaker.com. I'm Brian Blessing. There you have it, a preview of the NFC North. Back with more previews right here.
Let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.